Hi, everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing another chapter in your AS Cambridge A level psychology. Now, this is actually the final video, I believe, in the AS series. I've recorded all the other approaches biological, um, just slipped my mind, biological, social, learning, and cognitive. That's right. Yeah, so this is the final one under the social chapter, which is Piliavin et al., 1969, Subway Samaritans. You can see there's a picture of a subway. It looks like it's in Japan, I believe. Yes, in Japan, I can see from the words on top. I've been to Japan. I've been on the subways in Japan and Korea. It really does look like this. It's really clean, brightly lit, and everybody's just looking at their phone and sitting down quietly. Anyway, we're going to find out what subways have to do with Samaritans. Okay, now before we go into the content, I have some wonderful testimonials to share. So, as I'm recording this video, just a few days ago, A-level students around the world received their results. And here are some of the wonderful testimonials that students from around the world who follow my YouTube channel have been sharing with me. Right, so one of them said, Mr. Ross, just wanted to let you know I got A star for my psych. Haha, thank you for all your lessons. So this is actually a student of mine. He studies in the college that I used to teach at. And he got A star for his A2, right? So well done. Another student said, Hi, Mr. Ross, although I'm not your student anymore, and albeit you only taught me for half a semester during Sem 1, just wanted to say that I got my results today and I wouldn't have passed it without your YouTube videos. They helped a lot for a student like me who lacked self-discipline at the time and did a lot of cramming and last-minute PYPS revision, I guess. Thank you for taking your time in making them. So you're very, very welcome. I'm glad it helped you to pass your exams. Hello, I just wanted to say thank you for making videos on the psychology studies. I watched all your videos on them for my CIE exam and I got an A when I received the result today. So that always makes me happy to see students do well. But even if you don't get an A, even if you just pass and you're happy, that's good enough for me. The only thing I don't recommend is cramming because cramming is really quite stressful and it's not an effective study method. It's always good to pace out your studying. Okay, see a few more. Hi, I just want to thank you for the amazing lectures you upload to YouTube. I got an A in my AS Psychology paper today, and you're a big reason why. The lectures were so relatable and comprehensive, they really saved me. Thank you so much. You're very, very welcome. I'm glad to hear that. Mr. Ross, I'm really happy also. I never got an A in any of my mocks or tests before, but I was so surprised with my result that I got one and only A in psychology today. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't discovered your channel. So that's really very encouraging, especially if the A is in my subject, then I feel even more proud, doubly more proud for you. And okay, this screenshot was by a very special follower of mine. His name is Henry. I've mentioned his name in a previous video before because he has constantly been encouraging me and supporting me from the beginning, and he's always so encouraging and saying, bro, your videos are amazing, bro, and all that. And so he's a really nice guy. And he got an A, and he actually, this screenshot looks a bit different because he actually gave me a video call on Instagram and he was so happy. He said, I have to show this to you live. I can't just type it out, I have to show it to you. And he was so thankful. And I'm so proud of him. I mean, I always tell my students, you reap what you sow. You put in effort towards your examinations and your studies. Guess what? You're going to reap the results. So please work hard. Don't just work hard, work smart, right? So especially when it comes to studying, always use techniques of active recall, AR, active recall, right? If you want to find out more about active recall, check out this guy named Ali Abdal on YouTube. He's absolutely amazing. He does a lot of research and he posts these videos online which really summarize a lot of the effective study methods for students. Please go and check it out. It's really, really very, very good. Okay. So let's go to our topic for today. I love this quote by Oprah Winfrey. It says, helping others is the way we help ourselves. I truly believe this. I really believe that, if you're feeling down, depressed, lost, and you start helping other people out, you're going to feel a lot better, right? I've done some research in the area of self-compassion for my master's dissertation in psychology. And I also read some of that research, the more you help other people, the better you feel, right? Rather than just being selfish and keeping it all for yourself, helping other people is a good thing, right? It's always a good thing. And today's topic is all about helping, right? Altruism, Samaritanism, I'm going to discuss that. So this is the topic, Good Samaritanism, an underground phenomenon, question mark, right? So I love titles like this, which make you wonder like, whoa, what is this study about, right? It doesn't really like spell it out for you in a formal academic way. So there are three people, Irving Piliavin, Judith Rodin, and Jane Aline Piliavin as well, right? I assume they're same family. So what is it about? Well, you can read this. This is known as an abstract when you read a study. The little blurb here is like one paragraph. It's just an abstract, right? It was a field experiment performed to investigate the effect of several variables on helping behavior using the express trains of the New York 8th Avenue Independent Subway as a laboratory on wheels. Okay, so essentially what happened was they did this in a subway. So just imagine a big long train, right? There's my train, and there are lots of people standing inside. They had an emergency. Oh no, an emergency, right? Something happened to someone, right? And they wanted to see would the passengers help. That was basically it. Now, that sounds easy, but the results can be quite lengthy. So let's go through it slowly. Okay. Now, this is an interesting fellow. His name is Zimbardo. I may have mentioned him before. Zimbardo is a psychologist who was actually the lead psychologist for one of the most unethical experiments in the world, which is known as the Stanford Prison Experiment. I won't talk about that today, but Zimbardo then sort of like moved into an area of understanding why people help others. What makes a hero and stuff like that. And so I can't play this video because otherwise YouTube will stop me from uploading this video. But if you can find this online, just type bystander effect, right? Or Piliavin study. And okay, so what's happening here is that a bunch of people are all standing in this line, right? And someone, he's a stooge, right? I believe this guy is an ordinary person. Everybody else around him is in on the experiment. They're all stooges, right? They're all actors, right? Okay, oh, sorry, we skipped to this one. Oh, sorry. I think this is an easy example. Yeah, let's use this example. So in this example, I don't remember the first. Okay, there we go. Yeah, okay, so there it is. Yeah, I missed it. I skipped too far. So this guy is the innocent bystander. This guy is going to pickpocket this person, right? Watch that happening. Pickpocket, steal it. Now, it seems like this woman notices he kind of looks in his direction, but does he do anything? No, he doesn't. He looks at the guy, looks at him, doesn't do anything, doesn't report it, doesn't tell anyone anything, right? That's the bystander effect, right? When you're surrounded by people, you don't want to help, right? Because you think that maybe someone else is going to do it, right? And they repeated this with this guy. He's an actor. He's acting drunk, right? He's just lying down there. I believe he's got a bottle in his hand, right? So he's acting drunk, and guess what? Who helps him? Nobody. Tons of people cross his path, as you can see here. Nobody stops to help him, right? This guy, on the other hand, he's also an actor. He's dressed up differently, however. He doesn't have a bottle. He's dressed up like a businessman. Now, he's lying there. Looks like he's having a bad day. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, within 4 to 5 seconds, someone stops to ask him, hey, are you all right, sir? Is everything all right? And a bunch of people start helping him, right? So one lady, this lady on this side over here, she stops to help him first in less than 10 seconds, right? And then they pick him up, get him to stand up, and then I believe they reveal the experiment later. They're all smiling and they're like, oh, okay, wow, let's help him out and all stuff like that. And they did some interviews. Another guy, I think this is a woman. She's just laying down there. And again, there's a guy just reading something here, and everybody's just passing her. Nobody's helping her out, right? Look at that. She looks like she's dead, right? Nobody's helping, right? As you can see. This woman looks like she wants to help. Does she help? Finally, what happens is this guy goes in and helps, right? And then this woman, she then goes in to see whether he needs any help, right? So this was the first helper. This was a subsequent helper. And we're going to discuss this in today's study, right? Someone else had to help first before the woman came in, right? And then she was talking about it. You can find this video online, just type bystander effect, and you'll see a variety of different actors in different poses, doing different things, and whether or not people will give them help. As you can see, the guy dressed as a businessman, he received help within less than 5 seconds. And a lot of people came to help him out. So pretty interesting, right? Why does that happen? Well, we're going to find out. Anyway, let's look at the background of this study. This study was inspired by a very tragic murder of a young lady named Kitty Genovese. So what happened was she used to live in Queens, New York City, 1964. Incidentally, I almost went to Queens. I actually booked a hotel room to stay there. But unfortunately, because of COVID-19, I wasn't able to go. And I had to come back to my home country, Malaysia. Though I would have loved to go. So Kitty was coming home early in the morning from work. And she had finished a night shift, I think. And rather tragically, she was followed by a terrible person. And he assaulted her, stabbed her, and she was screaming, right? So she was screaming. But the attacker left once she started screaming, and then later returned, right? So he attacked her twice. The first time, And then I can't remember if he stabbed her fatally the first time. The first time it wasn't fatal. She was still able to walk to the front of her door and push it open, I believe. And then he came back a second time and assaulted her, and then that was fatal, right? Now, apparently, according to news articles, there were 38 witnesses who either saw the murder happen or heard it, right, as she was screaming. 38 people in the vicinity, sometime in the early morning near the neighborhood, right? And nobody helped. And so this was one of the most scandalous news stories at the time, right? However, later investigation actually shows that 38 people were not, quote unquote, watching the murder unfold. So what happened was, so as you can see the newspaper article here, apathy means basically having no emotion. Apathy at stabbing of Queen's woman shocks inspector, right, by Martin Gansberg. For more than half an hour, 38 respectable, law-abiding citizens in Queens watched a killer stalk and stab a woman in 3 separate attacks in Cuba. Was it 3 separate attacks? Okay, I thought it was 2. Another article said 37 who saw a murder didn't call the police. So that's what basically, okay, some people say it was 38, some people say 37. I think I see more of them say 38, so I usually go with 38. But you can see how the report was written, right? Nobody called the police. Nobody stopped to help. That's what people assumed at the time, that these people were just watching something unfold and not a single person helped. And this was a shock to many people in the community. They were like, oh my God, if something bad happens to me, are you telling me that nobody's going to help me if I'm being murdered, if I'm being stabbed? And so that scared a lot of people. It made people doubt humanity and stuff like that. However, a further research actually shows that that's not the case, right? That's not the case because there were not 38 people who were actually watching the murder unfold, and you can watch videos on YouTube which explain this, right? It was a few people perhaps who had seen it or heard it, and then a few people who may have been confused what's going on. They may not have actually seen anything. They may not have been able to hear clearly, right? So it's not exactly 38 people watching it, right? As the news articles seem to suggest. Okay. Now, let's look at some past research by some researchers. They found that bystanders would belittle a victim instead of showing compassion, right? So bystanders, people watching at the side, they would actually make fun of the victim. Like let's say, for example, you see someone being bullied, and instead of helping them, you say, yeah, you deserve it, right? So sometimes they would see bystanders showing this kind of behavior, right? Darley and Latane are very famous, particularly in the area of bystander research. Instead of finding safety in numbers, as the saying goes, they actually found what is known as the diffusion of responsibility, right? So diffusion of responsibility, we're going to talk about that soon, right? They did a study for people who heard epileptic seizures on earphones. So what actually happened was they invited a group of students. Oh, sorry, my slides went out. Let's go back. They invited a group of students. Go back to my slides. A group of students to come into a room, and they gave them a pair of earphones and a microphone, and each student was separated in different rooms, and they told the students to talk to each other using the microphones and the earphones and have a conversation about their lives. And then during that conversation, one of them would act out as if they had a seizure, right? And they found that the more people who were in that conversation, the less likely the person with the seizure was going to receive any help, right? Some students got up, went out of the room and said, I need help, someone's having a seizure. They only did that when there were less people in the room, right? Having a conversation on the microphone and in earphones with them. So if it was a one-to-one conversation with someone and that one person in front of that you're listening to had a seizure, they were more likely to help. But if it was a conversation with 5 people in your earphones and one person had a seizure, you're less likely to help. So diffusion of responsibility. They believed if others were present in the situation, therefore they were less likely to give help because there are other people who are present. Okay. Now, Latane and Rodin in 1969 did a study called The Lady in Distress, right? It was the sound of a woman falling down, and I guess she sounded like she was injured, right? Bystanders who were strangers with each other were less likely to help compared to if they were friends, right? So if you and a friend heard a woman fall down, you're more likely to go and give help. But if you were just walking with a stranger that you didn't know, you're less likely to give help. Bryan and Test in 1967 said, you're more likely to be a good Samaritan if you see others helping. So we saw that in the video, right? Someone goes and helps first, and then another lady came to help. Even though the lady was looking very uncertain, she looked like she wanted to help, but she didn't make the first move. She waited for a guy to make the first move, right? Lab studies by Darley, Latane, and Rodin found that increases in group size led to decreases in frequency and increases in latency of responding to help. So what does this mean? Frequency means how often people help. So the bigger your group, the less frequently people help. The bigger your group, the slower people help, right? The slower your response to go and help someone. That's what I mean, right? So bigger groups, less help, and slower help given, right, to victims. regarding similarity, individuals are more likely to help their own race than that people of another race, right? So this is a little bit, it sounds racist, but we don't speak of it in terms of racism. We speak of it in terms of preference, particularly for this study. We're not looking at the idea of racism. We're just looking at who's helping and who's not, right? Shopler and Matthews, people who are responsible for the situation get less sympathy from others, right? For example, let's say you intentionally get drunk. Getting drunk is something that you have to do intentionally, right? You don't get drunk by accident. Excuse me, just drinking some water. So because you intentionally get drunk, it's your fault. You're responsible for it. So people are less sympathetic. If you get drunk and fall down, people say, he's drunk. He deserves it, right? Let's look at something else. In experiment 1, okay, so Darley and Latane, they did 2 experiments. They did 2 experiments, which are interesting. In experiment 1, what I mentioned earlier, college students were given a mic and headphones, and they were talking to one person or multiple people about college life. They couldn't see these people, they just heard them, right? They couldn't see anyone else, just heard them over the earphones. One person was a stooge who pretended to have a seizure and asked for help on the earphones. Students who were alone with that stooge, they looked for help. But students with others were less likely to help, right? So this was the diffusion of responsibility, right? If you were hearing 5 different voices and one of them had a seizure, you're less likely to help, right? In experiment 2, what they wanted to prove was, okay, so one of the criticisms, but some people I think commented, or perhaps they discussed that, okay, the reason why some students didn't go for help is because the danger doesn't involve them, right? If someone's having a seizure, that person is in danger, not me. So I don't need to help them because I'm not suffering in any way, right? I don't need to do anything. I don't need to respond. So they want to see, are people willing to still look for help even if their own lives are in danger, right? So college students were asked to fill out a questionnaire. Either they filled it out alone in a room or they filled it out within a group of stooges, right? Smoke started to coming into the room. A lot of smoke, right? It started little and then it became a lot. And stooges were told to ignore the smoke, right? Those who were actors, paid to do it, not paid to do it, but actors who were part of the experiment, they were told, ignore the smoke, don't do anything, just fill out the questionnaire. And students, the participants, if they were alone in the room when the smoke came in, they left the room and reported the smoke. But students who were surrounded by stooges who did not do anything, only 10% of them left the room to get help. So that's pretty interesting, right? In fact, I think this is a video of it, right? There's a video of it, so you can see this is the room. Right, a single individual here writing a questionnaire. Smoke starts to come in. She notices the smoke. She gets up immediately and goes and looks for help. Condition 2 with Confederates. Smoke's coming to the room. She's filling out with other people. Look at that. Nothing. Right? She doesn't move. 16 seconds. She's just looking at the smoke. She knows it's there. The stooges know it's there. She's looking around. Nobody does anything. Nothing. And she does not react. After 5 minutes, she's still in the chair, scratching her head, wondering, why is nobody responding after 10 minutes? Look at that. After 20 minutes, does nothing, right? Just because other people are not responding. So she doesn't respond. Diffusion of responsibility. And mind you, smoke indicates what? Fire, right? So it's possibility her life is in danger, but she does absolutely nothing. Very interesting, right? Oh, finally she does leave at 20 minutes. Okay, great. Okay. Let's look at some key terms before we go to the study. So what is the diffusion of responsibility? It's a reduced sense of responsibility when people are in groups. Now, this is just my personal definition that I'm just writing it out in my words, just to make it easier to understand, right? A diffusion of responsibility is a reduced sense of responsibility when people are in groups, right? You don't feel as responsible as you would feel if you were alone, right? It doesn't always have to be just to help others. It could be in other situations as well regarding responsibility. But as long as you're in a group, you feel less responsible as an individual. Bystander effect. What is bystander effect? It's when people fail to offer help in emergencies, especially when others are present. So this is specifically for emergencies when you use the word bystander effect. Sometimes people use these two terms interchangeably, and for the most part, well, it's not that accurate to use it interchangeably. The bystander effect is specifically when you see people failing to offer help, especially in emergencies when other people are around them, right? What explains the bystander effect is the diffusion of responsibility. So your question is, why are people failing to offer help? Oh, it's because they feel less responsible. So the diffusion of responsibility explains the bystander effect. Okay, hope that makes sense. Now, Good Samaritanism is a concept that comes from the Bible, right? It's someone who helps others in trouble, right? And I'll show you a picture of that later, right? Latency involves time, right? So latency involves other things as well. But for the definition of today's experiment, it's talking about time. How long it takes something, or for something, excuse me, let me correct the typo. How long it takes for something to happen, right? For example, a victim who falls down. Skip there. Right? So how long it takes for something to happen? For example, people who help a victim who falls. So if the victim falls right now, how many seconds does it take to help that person? Right? For help to be offered. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 20. As you saw earlier in the video, it took her 20 minutes before she got up and left the room, which was filling up with smoke. Right? So that's latency. How much time is taken for something to happen. Right? Now, you can look at this picture. A guy is there lying on the floor and everybody's just here as, what do we call this effect? The bystander effect. So this picture is of the bystander effect, right? There are lots of people there. Nobody seems to want to take responsibility and help the guy, right? Why do they do this? It's explained by the diffusion of responsibility because people feel less responsible. Okay. This is Good Samaritanism. So this is the story in the Bible about the Good Samaritan. This guy here, he's the Good Samaritan. It's not Jesus, it's the Good Samaritan. Jesus is telling a story to his disciples and followers, right? So this guy is the Good Samaritan. There's a priest and a rabbi or something, if I remember correctly. And basically, the people here on horses are all like supposedly religious people, very high standing, morally upright. And they just pass by this this guy who's injured and he's been robbed and he's just thrown at the side of the road. And these high morally, upstanding people, they don't help this guy, right? They don't help him. They just pass him by. But this guy, this Good Samaritan, so in Jesus' time, Samaritans were a group of people who were often looked down by the religious leaders at the time, right? The Jews looked down on Samaritans. They thought that they were lesser people, right? Second-class citizens or lower, right? But in Jesus' story, this guy actually stops to help this guy, right? He bandages his wounds. He puts him in a room and stuff like that. He pays for his meals, his expenses, and stuff like that. So Jesus is basically saying, be like this guy. Be more like a good Samaritan to everyone, your neighbors, right? So this is the story that sparked this term, Good Samaritanism. If you're someone who helps others in need, you're a good Samaritan. And it's good. I think it's good to be a good Samaritan, right? Go, if Jesus encourages you or whatever, you listen to the story, go, be a good Samaritan. Always do good. Doing good is always a good thing, right? Helps you, helps other people, right? Now, what were the aims of this study? The aim of this study was to investigate bystander behavior in a natural setting, right? Reason why natural? Why? Because a lot of past research was mostly done in a laboratory. And what's the problem with that? When you do stuff in a laboratory versus when you do stuff in real life, what's the difference? Well, in real life, it's actually real, right? In the laboratory, it's a fake environment. People may not react in a natural way, right? Past research also used a lot of audio cues, but not visual cues of a situation that needed help. So they wanted to use visual cues for the natural setting rather than just listening to an emergency. They wanted to show people an emergency. Okay, what's next? To investigate the effect of 4 situational variables in helping behavior. So what were the variables? Type of victim, race of victim, behavior of the model, and size of group of bystanders. So it was a bit complicated because there are a lot of different things that we're looking at, but we'll go through each of them one by one. This study can get a bit complicated, especially the results section, because there are so many different factors. If you find it confusing, just slow down the video, come back to it if you're confused, come back to it later and stuff like that. Hopefully you'll understand better. Now, why do they choose these 4? Is because past research actually highlights that these factors are relevant to helping behavior. Right? So these factors somehow affect people and their helping behavior. So the current study includes all of them rather than just one. Now, who can remember what type of experiment are we dealing with? Do you remember what it is? So we've got some variables, we're trying to control them, but we're doing it in a natural way, a natural setting rather. So it's called a field experiment, right? So this is a field experiment. Why is it a field experiment? Because it's in a real environment. Right? It's in a subway, as you can see here. Only some things are manipulated, so there is manipulation, but only for some things. Right? The design is a between subjects design or independent measures. What does that mean? Remember what it means? It means different participants are in each condition. Right? So each condition number 1, you've got different group of participants. Condition number 2, a different group of participants. They don't mix around between the conditions. Okay. What are the IVs? Type of victim. Now, there are 2 types, either drunk or ill. Sometimes this is also called cane, C-A-N-E. I'll explain why later, but it's basically a drunk. Basically, someone acts like they're drunk or someone acts like they're just ill, not feeling well, right? Another characteristic is either black or white, right? So the race of victim. Behavior of model, either the model, and I'll explain what the model is doing later, is either early or late. And the size of the group of bystanders here is measured as the number of passengers, right? more or less passengers. How does that affect helping behavior? So the DV is your dependent variable. This is what we want to measure. We want to measure the level of bystander helping. Now, this was measured in a few ways. Firstly, the time taken for passengers to help, the total number of passengers who helped, the race, gender, and location of different helpers, as well as verbal remarks made by passengers. Now, that all of the above are all quantitative data. Only this is qualitative. Why? Because this has to do with verbal remarks. So it's qualitative, in-depth. All the others, just time, number of people, those are all numbers, numerical, quantitative data, right? Now, location, where was it located? It was located in a New York City subway, right? It was the Express A and D trains of the New York 8th Avenue Independent Subway. When I was in the US, I really wanted to go to New York and use the subway. I did not have the opportunity, unfortunately, but I do look forward, hopefully one day, to going back there again, right? Now, why do they choose these trains? Well, these trains make no stops between the 59th Street and the 125th Street. It is a 7.5 minute long subway ride, right? Where they're just stuck there for 7.5 minutes. Okay. Now, why was it done in a subway train? Why a subway? What do you think? What's the reason why they chose a subway train instead of a public park or something else, right? So there are a few reasons. One of them might be because if you think about it, a train is kind of like a little laboratory on wheels, right? That's how the psychologist described it. Because a train is a enclosed environment. They can't run away, right? Everybody who's there is just there, stuck there. So it's kind of like a laboratory in a way, right? Other than that, people also have to see an emergency happening, right? So they want to make sure that if you are stuck in a little box and something bad happens, everybody's going to see it. Everybody's going to see it because it's just one area, right? Everybody has to see what's going on, right? So that makes it clear to people that there's an emergency happening, right? And you also want to prevent rationalizations that the victim doesn't need help. For example, if you are walking and you hear a sound like, hey, and you're not sure whether someone's asking for help or did they just hit their toe on something or did they just burp or have a hiccup, you're not sure, right? So they wanted people to be sure that there's a victim, something is happening to someone and someone needs help. They don't want it to be ambiguous. So having a subway train is good because it's an enclosed area. It's not very big. And so if someone falls down or something bad happens to them, people are going to know and they can't rationalize like, oh, no, that guy's fine, nothing's happening to him, right? It just sounds like a cough. No, they're going to see that something's clearly not right, right? Now, why was it a 7.5 minute train ride and not a short ride, right? Why was it so long? Why does it have to be about 7.5 minutes? Not specifically that number, but why does it have to be a certain length of time? In my country, the train stations, right, between train stations, for something known as our LRT train, is only about 1 to 2 minutes. We don't have a 7-minute train ride, right? In the New York subway, they did. Why did they choose it? Think about it for a second. What do you think? Right. So one of the reasons why it's good in a sense because they're stuck in one train, the group of people here can't go in and go out so easily. They can't change people. And that's good because it keeps the participants the same for the duration of the study, right? You can't have something too short because then people don't have time to react. So that's why the researchers took train stations that had a 7.5 minute ride. It was long enough that once someone falls down, the passengers have a time to look at it and also to react. If the train was only a 1 minute stop, you don't have time to act out the emergency and have reaction, right? By the time you react, you reach the next station and a bunch of new people come in, the old people go out, right? So it doesn't work so easily that way. You need some time. So they chose 7.5 minutes. It's not a specific reason why it has been. It could have been 7 minutes, could have been 6 minutes. They just happened to have a train station which was 7.5 minutes away, and I think that was just convenient for them. Okay, so let's talk about the sample. It was opportunity sampling. What does that involve? That means you just take the opportunity to sample people who are conveniently available, right? It just so happens that people are there, they're there at an opportune moment in time, right, in history, and you just take them, right? So who were the sample? They were passengers traveling on this train, right? It was between a place called Harlem and the Bronx from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's when they conducted this experiment. Approximately 4,450 participants in total. Approximately, so that's really quite big. It's the biggest sample size we have. 45% of them were black, 55% of them were white. So this is a pretty good mixture, right? The mean number of people per car was 43, right? Okay, the word car here refers to train car. So each train has different cars connected to them. This is a car, right? Each individual carriage in the train is known as a car, right? Okay. The mean number of people in a critical area is 8.5. Okay, I'll explain what the critical area is in the next few slides, but just keep in mind 8.5. Obviously, you can't have a 0.5 of a person, right? 8.5 people doesn't make sense. It was between 8 to 9 people, right? The critical area is where the emergency takes place, right? So someone falls down in the critical area, and that is, basically the falling down is the emergency. The critical area is the part of the car where it takes place. So you can see it here, right? Here is the critical area. This is the entire train car, right? The people from here can see what's going on here. They can't see it, right? It's just a small pathway here, but they can see what's going on quite clearly. The critical area, as I said, is the place where the victim, who is an actor, falls down. So he acts out the emergency here. Everybody here can see it. Everybody here can see it, right? This is known as the adjacent area, ADJACNT, the adjacent area, which means the word adjacent basically means next to something, adjacent to the critical area, right? So that's how it works. You can see other things here. Observer 2 is here. Observer 1 is here. There were observers. These were the part of the research team. Okay, the exit doors are here. Exit doors are here. Exit doors, exit doors. Victim is here. Victim always stands around the middle of the train. There's actually a pole here. It's as a dot here, but there's actually a pole that the person is next to. Then he falls down next to the pole, right? Doors to the next car. Remainder of the cars here, right? So this is considered one train car. Critical area, adjacent area, right? So that's how it works. Okay, so now let's talk about people involved in the study, right? So they were all students of general studies, okay, at Columbia University, right? Columbia University. I believe I'm not sure where, I guess it's in New York, maybe, somewhere nearby. Right, so there were 4 teams of 4 students, right? So 4 and 4, 16 in total. One victim from the team played the role of the stooge, right? This person was between the age of 26 to 35. 3 white males, students, played the stooge, and 1 black student played the stooge as well, right? There were not enough black students, there was only 1, unfortunately, right? They wore casual clothes, right? What were the clothes? An Eisenhower jacket, old slacks, and no tie. This is an Eisenhower jacket. I'm not sure what defines an Eisenhower jacket, but if you look it up on Google, you'll find it looks like a thick kind of jacket like this, a brownish color, black color, and so on and so forth. So they wore something like this. They wore an old pair of slacks. This guy's pair of slacks looks new, right? They wore an old pair, and they did not wear any tie, just like this, right? No tie. Also, there were 2 conditions, right? A drunk condition where the actor, one of these guys, they acted like they were drunk. They smelled of liquor and carried a liquor bottle wrapped in a brown bag. So something like this. They smelled of liquor. The ill condition, remember I said there was drunk and ill. Ill, basically they appeared, not feeling well. Appeared sober and carried a black cane. Right. So this is it. So how many times did the person have to act drunk? It was 38 times out of 103. How many times did the person act ill? 65 out of 103. The numbers are quite different. We'll see why later. One of the reasons is why, because people just did not enjoy acting like they were drunk, right? It wasn't enjoyable. It was not an enjoyable experience. So that's why the students did not like doing this as much. Okay. All of the actors, the stooges, dressed and behaved identically. So these stooges were the ones who were going to pretend to fall down and look like they needed some help. They all behaved the same way, right? The model was another person, right? So this was also a stooge. They're in on it, right? Between 24 to 29 years. There were 4 white male models, right? They wore casual clothes, but they were not identical, right? Just casual. The mode of provider existed. Excuse me. So how did they help, right? The models here, the job of the model is very simple. The model is watching their friend. Their friend pretends to fall down as the victim. The model, after a certain period of time, goes and helps the friend, right? They help them to sit up. They raise their victim to a sitting position. Okay, and they stayed with the victim till the end of the train ride. Okay, the last person is an observer. The observer sometimes in the study they call the observer a confederate. Right, a confederate is a fancy word for a stooge. Basically, just means they're in on the experiment. They know what's going on. Right, this consisted of 2 female students. So what's the procedure? 2 males and 2 females board the train. Remember, there are 4 teams of 4. They varied their location of the experimental cars. So there are a lot of different train cars, right? Maybe, I don't know how many, 10, 15, whatever, 5, 6, whatever, right? So they would vary the train cars from time to time after each trial, right? Female students would be observers. They sat at the adjacent area only, and they quietly recorded data, right? Male students were either the model or the victim. The victim, the guy who falls down. The model is the guy who goes and helps after a certain period of time, and they were all standing, right? Victim stood next to the pole at the critical area, as I mentioned. After passing the first station, which was a 70-second time period, right? So remember, this is going through from one station to the other station, but it doesn't make any stops in between the stations, right? There are stations in between, it doesn't stop. However, once you pass the first station, which is approximately 70 seconds into the ride, the victim staggered and collapsed, right? Until receiving help, the victim was supine, and looking up. So basically, they were on their back looking up, right? Until they received help. Okay. Now, if no help was received, the model then helped the victim to stand up at the end of the experiment, right? So remember, the model sometimes goes to help, right, depending on certain time. And then if they don't receive any help, then the model will just come and help the victim up at the end of the experiment. Okay, so here's the procedure. At the train stop, after the experiment is done, the team gets off the train after the 7.5 minutes. Okay, they wait separately till all the riders have left the station. Why do they do that? Obviously, you don't want to wait as a group because then it looks suspicious, right? People might figure out, oh, what's going on, right? So they waited separately. Okay, they boarded the train going in the opposite direction this time, right? Another 7.5 minute ride, and they did about 6 to 8 trials per day, right? 6 to 8 trials per day. Okay. All trials were run on the same day. All trials that ran on the same day use the same victim condition. So, for example, let's say they're doing 6 to 8 trials on a Monday. All those 6 to 8 trials would be the drunk condition. For example, if they just do drunk on the first one, all the rest would also be the drunk condition. Okay, let's move on. Victims. Okay, victims were always male, right? They were either drunk or ill, pretending to be drunk or pretending to be ill. Models were also always male, right? They had 4 conditions. The conditions were, I'll show you the conditions soon. And what they had to do was basically raise the victim up to a sitting position, not standing, sitting, and then wait next to the victim. That's it. They're sitting on the floor, I assume, right? So the model conditions were there were 4 conditions, right, of each model. Either they were critical area early model, right? What does this mean? This means that at the 4th station, after they passed the 4th station, which was approximately, I think that's wrong. It should be 1st station, 4th station. Got to double check that later. I thought it was the 1st station, which was 70 seconds, not the 4th. Give me a moment just to quickly double check that, whether it's 4th or whether it's the 6th station. Okay. Once again, I do apologize. Sometimes I have to prepare all these slides late at night, and sometimes I lose track of what station and what station. Let me just double check this very quickly. Okay, I have to find the original study itself and read it because 70 seconds, let's see. Yeah, okay, so I made a mistake. Let me just correct that first. Better to get it right now. Okay. It was the 1st station, not the 4th. I think I just made a typo there. Do forgive me for that. Okay, so it was 1st station and then 6th station, 1st station and then 6th station, right? So the timing is also given. It was either 70 seconds or 150 seconds, 70 seconds or 150 seconds. So that's why it was defined as early and late. So what's basically happening here? Oh, sorry. Oh dear, what's happening to my slides? Sorry, just skip that. What's happening is that the model has 2 conditions. Either they help really early or they help later. Right? If you remember in the beginning of these slides, I showed you a video of a guy helping the guy who was like, so someone had, was lying down on the floor, they acted like they were, drunk or whatever, and then someone goes and helps, right? But there's a timer there, right? So some people help earlier and some people help later. And so the researchers want to figure out whether or not there's a difference. If someone helps earlier, does it change people's helping behavior? If someone helps later, does it change their helping behavior, right? So after the 1st station, 70 seconds after the collapse, right? Excuse me, no. Actually, no, it is wrong. I think it is fourth. Okay. I'm so sorry. I know why I got confused, and let me just clarify this once and for all. It is the fourth station. Okay, let me explain why. So, where is this? Where is the first station? Okay, I remember why I got confused. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. This is what happens. The victim, after passing the first station, drops to the floor. That's what the first station symbolizes. I got confused. I apologize. So what happens is the train starts moving, goes. After it hits the first station, right, which is approximately 70 seconds after the beginning, right, from the first station, 70 seconds after that, then the victim staggers forward and collapses. That's the first station. Now, after the collapse, they wait another 70 seconds to then go and help them. So I got it mixed up. My apologies. So this is at the fourth station. So the first station, the victim falls down. Then they go second, third. By the fourth station, that's when the model comes in to help. Right? So let's say in the first station, the victim falls down. 70 seconds after they fall down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 69, 70, then the model comes in and goes and helps them. So this was known as critical area early. The model is located, remember there are two areas, the critical area and the adjacent. So the model is located in the critical area, and after 70 seconds, goes and helps the victim. Or they could be in the late area, which means that, late condition, meaning after the sixth station, which was about 150 seconds. They wait for a longer period of time. But they're also in the critical. Or they could be in adjacent. So remember, critical and adjacent. Now they're on this side, the adjacent area. And they help after 70 seconds. Or they're in the adjacent area and they help only after 150 seconds. Okay, so that's what it was. I got mixed up. I'm so sorry about that. Right, so first station is for the victim to fall down. Fourth or sixth station is for the model to offer help. Okay, but usually we can refer to it by seconds. So 70 seconds after collapse. Right, 150 seconds after collapse. Okay, hope that clears it up. Apologies for the mistake. Okay, let's go to the procedure. Okay, so some conditions also had no model, right? So there were trials that were run with no models to give help, right? This is like a control condition. No model and 4 model conditions were decided by a random number table and assigned to each team accordingly, right? So what conditions the team is going to run, it's randomly decided, which is good because that means it's fair, right? Okay, what measures were used? First observer, right? There were 2 observers, right? 2 female observers. The first one was concentrating on the critical area. She took down notes of the race, the sex, and the location of every rider, seated or standing, right, inside the train. Right? The total number of people in the car, she also calculated. The total total 3 people who helped the victim. Oh, sorry. Small type. Total number. I forgot to put the shift there. Total number of people who helped the victim. Yeah. So basically, total number of people in the whole car, total number of people who helped the victim, and the race, sex, and location of every helper, wherever they located, critical area, adjacent area, where. Okay, the second observer was focused more on the adjacent area. They will also record the same thing, race, sex, and location of every rider, latency of first helper's arrival after the victim collapse, right? Remember, latency is time. So how much time is taken for the first helper to arrive after the victim collapses, right? And also latency of first helper arrival after the model went to help the victim. So remember, there's a model who goes and helps after a while, and then after that model helps, how fast or how slow before another person comes to help, a random stranger, right? Bystander. They also recorded qualitative data. Both of them recorded the passenger comments, right? So people whispering to each other, oh my gosh, the guy fell down, whatever it is, right? They also tried to get comments from riders next to them. They call this eliciting comments. Elicit means to get someone to do something, right? So what do they would, when they're sitting down next to people in the train, they would talk to them and kind of engage them in conversation and try to get them to give some comments about what's going on, right? Some were spontaneous comments, people just openly commented. Some they had to elicit, so they had to talk and get those comments. Now what results? Okay, what do you think the results are? Do you think people helped or people didn't help? If you were in a subway train and someone fell down, Would you help or would you not help? Right? As we saw earlier in the video, sometimes people help, sometimes people don't help. So let's find out what the results are. Results can be a bit confusing. Let's look at this table. I always tell my students, first thing you should look for is the title. What does the title say? Percentage of trials in which help was given by race and condition of victim, and total number of trials run in each condition. So what can we see? How many trials was help given by race and condition, and also how many trials were run in all the conditions. Okay, so we can look here as trials. Here's the race, white or black. Now white also had cane and drunk, black also had cane and drunk, right? This is a independent measures design. Independent measures design, yeah, correct. So firstly, in this case there was no model, right? So no helper. How many trials were run? 54, 11, right? Okay, and in how many trials was help given? 100% of the trials. Help was given. 100% of the trials. Help was given. In this one, only 8 trials and 11 trials. 100% of the trials, help was given. 73% of the trials, help was given. So what does that ultimately tell you? Right? 73% is the only one that's not 100 here. Right? What does that mean? That means when there was a black victim, a black stooge, who was acting like he was drunk, people only helped 73% of the time. Out of these 11 sessions, they only helped 73% of the time. Right? Now let's look at the model trial. So this is with a helper, right? There's someone who goes and helps either after 70 seconds or after 150 seconds. Under the white victims with the cane, they did 3 rounds of this. 100% of them, all 3 got help. They did 13 rounds, 77%, there's a percentage missing here, of them received help. Here they did 0 rounds, so they didn't do any trials for a black victim holding a cane, so there's no data here, right? And they did 3 with the black victim who was drunk, and then 67% of the time that person received help. So the majority of the time it was the white victim using a cane who received help. But it's a bit hard to compare because some have 13 trials, some have 3. So it's not really fair to do a comparison. Well, you can compare the 3 to 3, but it's not fair to compare all 3 of them because there are not enough trials on all 4 conditions. Why did that happen? Well, we'll find out soon enough. Okay. So what is this table about? Always read the title. Total number of drunk and cane trials. Okay, I want you to try and count it now on your own. How much is the total number of drunk trials and how much is the total number of cane trials? I'll give you a few seconds to count that. Okay, so how many? Cane had 65, drunk had 38. So how do you calculate this, right? It's pretty straightforward. Take all the cane trials, which was 54 plus 3, so 57, we know that. Another cane one, 57, plus 8 is 65. Drunk is 24, plus 14, you get 38, right? Pretty straightforward. Okay, in which condition had the highest percentage of trials that received help? Which condition had the highest, right? It's all the 4 with the 100%. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a white victim, on almost all occasions, got 100% of help. Only on one occasion got 77% when they were acting drunk. For the black victim, 100% on the cane trial only, 73 and 67 of the drunk trials. Which condition had the lowest? So if you look at that, what's the lowest one? Lowest percentage of trials that received help was a black victim in the drunk condition with a model who's helping as well. So 67% of these 3 is, again, it's a very small number. 3 trials only is not very valid, but let's just go with that for now. There's a reason why they couldn't conduct much of it. We'll explain later. Okay. We're explaining right now actually. So why less drunk trials versus cane trials? So there were a lot more cane trials, right? The guy acting ill, holding a cane, but a lot less drunk trials. Why? It will be noted that not only were there more cane trials and drunk trials, they were also distributed unevenly across black and white victims. The reason for this is easier to explain than to correct. Teams 1 and Teams 2, both white victims, started the first day on the cane condition. Teams 3, which was black and white, and Team 4, black and white, began in the drunk condition. Teams were told to alternate the conditions across days. They arranged their running days to fit their schedules. On the 4th day, Team 2 violated the instruction and ran the cane trials when they should have run drunk trials. The victim didn't like playing the drunk, so that was the problem. The actor didn't like to play the drunk role, and so they didn't do it. They skipped it, and instead they just acted like they were sick and they needed help because they had a cane. Right? Then the Columbia students' strike occurred, the teams disbanded, and the study of necessity was over. At this point, Teams 1 and Teams 3 had run only 3 days each, while Teams 2 and Teams 4 had run on 4 days each. So there was a problem there. One was the problem, some teams violated the instructions. They didn't want to act out the drunk condition, and at the same time, there was a student strike. They couldn't get enough data. Right? Now, Let's look at the result of spontaneous helping, right? So the first of all, what is spontaneous helping? Spontaneous helping is whenever someone helps before the model can act, or when there's no model, right? That's why we call it spontaneous. There's nobody offering help, and then they just spontaneously want to help, right? So people receive spontaneous help 62 out of 65 trials, right? For the cane victim, that is. For the drunk victim, they receive spontaneous help 19 out of 38 trials. What does that indicate? That indicates that spontaneous help is more common when people are not drunk, right? If you're acting like a drunk, you're going to receive less help. Spontaneous is, again, as I said earlier, is before the model acted. So before the 70 seconds when the model has to come in, or the 150 seconds, someone goes and helps them, right? So that's spontaneous help. This indicates that actually people, generally speaking, were quite helpful, right? 62 out of 65 trials is almost all the time, right? People were willing to help. 19 out of 38 again is less, it's about half of it, but there's still quite a fair amount of people who are willing to help, right? So that's encouraging. People are not so evil, right? Now, it could also be due to the group size differences. Could it be due to the group size differences in the cars? Whereas, for example, using our common sense, if there are more people, there's more opportunity for help to be given. So think about it. Okay, what this basically means is that if you have a car that has only 3 people in it, there's obviously going to be less likelihood that they're going to be able to offer help because there's so few people. But if you have a car that has 100 people in it, just because there are 100 people in it and the group size is so big, right? Therefore, there's a good opportunity. The sounds that people are more people just means more opportunity. It has nothing to do with diffusion of responsibility. It's nothing to do with accurately determining how much time the person takes to help. The problem is that there's so many people that obviously someone is going to help, right? Now that could be a reason for it, right? That could be a reason why people are generally more helpful. But here's the thing. The mean number of passengers for drunk and cane trials is actually similar, right? So it's not due to group size differences, because this would indicate that, maybe 62 times the people receive help because the group of cane viewers are higher. So there's more chance for them to help. No, the drunk victims and the cane victims had the same size audience, right? The passengers in the audience, you can say audience, right? Audience like putting on a show for them, but the passengers for both the cane and the drunk are pretty much similar, right? So the differences are not due to the group size of people watching. It must be something else, right? So in the drunk condition, the mean number of people standing up was 40, passengers that is. In the cane condition, the mean number of passengers was 45. So it's pretty close enough, you can make a comparison, right? What's next? So let's look at the results in terms of latency, which is to do with time, how much time people took. Can we compare the total latency response time between drunk and cane? Can we take all the timing for drunk, take all the timing for cane and compare them? Can we do that? Not really. Why not, right? So the reason why is because on model trials, we don't know how much time people would have needed to help the model to help the victim if the model wasn't there, right? What does this mean? Let's say someone in front of you collapses, right, and you go and help them, right? So then you can easily count your time latency. But let's say someone collapses and you don't help them immediately, and then someone else goes and helps them, right? The model goes and helps them, and then you help, right? So that makes it difficult to compare timings because you have the model there who's helping. You don't know how people would have reacted if he wasn't there, right? Maybe it would have been faster, slower, whatever, right? And if you remove all the model trials with this problem, then you don't have enough drunk trials on the non-model to compare it, right? So the problem, as I said earlier, there are a lot more trials than others, right? Other conditions, and so if you remove some of those conditions, there's not enough to make a proper comparison, right? If you don't understand what I'm saying, it's okay, it's fine. Just take it as it goes, right? The solution to this problem is to have new grouping. Right? So instead of saying that, okay, I'm going to divide you by so and so and so, I'm going to just say that either you are a before 70 seconds helper or after 70 seconds helper, right? 70 seconds is the time when the first model is about to help, right? Although it shouldn't be done this way, the researcher did it anyway because they have the data, they don't want to waste it, so they use it, so they just have a slightly different definition, right? So they wanted to compare cane and drunk trials for only non-model trials, right? So they took all the trials where the model was not present and they compared them. Any response which was more than 400 seconds was considered non-responsive, right? So if someone falls in the train and after 400 seconds nobody picks him up or helps him up, then you consider it the end of the experiment, right? So not the end of the experiment. You consider it as a non-responsive. People don't respond after 400 seconds. Now, the median amount of time for a cane condition is 5 seconds before help is given. The median for the drunk condition is 109 seconds to receive help, right? So either 109 for the person to give help, 109 you can say for the person to receive help on the receiving side, right? So as you can see quite clearly, people in the drunk condition receive help a lot slower than people in the cane condition or the ill condition. And those results were significantly different from each other. But what does this mean? What does it all mean? It took significantly longer for people to help in the drunk trials versus the cane trials. That's basically it, right? 109 seconds versus 5 seconds basically tells you one thing. People are more willing or faster to help those in the cane condition than drunk. Do take note that this was added as a footnote in the original study. It was not really what the original authors were looking for. So it's added as a footnote rather than in the actual discussion section. Right? The main result is either before or after. What's this main result? Okay, yeah, so the previous page, as I said, was just in a footnote. The main result we want to find out is before or after 70 seconds. Right? So, excuse me, no. Why did I put that in? Main result. Can't remember what I wrote about this. Anyway, I don't think it's important. Here you can see this is the table, right? So as I said earlier, instead of dividing people in different categories, just put before 70 seconds, cane and drunk. After 70 seconds, cane and drunk, right? So before 70 seconds is when before the first model can help, so the spontaneous helping here. After 70 seconds is after the model has helped, how many people are going to help, right? So you can, I know it's a very big table, ignore these three for now, just look at the first one. We're just going to look at the first one, okay? What does the first one say? Which condition received more help? So looking at all of this, can you pick out the condition that received more help than others? Which one was it? In terms of time before or after 70 seconds, right? So between the two different time periods, before 70 seconds or after 70 seconds, imagine it's like two groups, right? Which group received more help? Right? This, by the way, is total number of trials when help was received, the help was offered. So is it the before group that got more help or the after group that more help? It was the before, right? Before 70 seconds were received, more help was given. How do you know this? Take 57 plus 11, 68. Right? So before 70 seconds, 68 trials, people went to help already. Whereas comparing the 68 with the what is that? Yeah, actually, no, I'm not comparing anything. We're just saying that, yeah, this one is more than this one. Okay, yeah, that's it. Condition, okay, so now, I gave the answer. In which condition was more help received, right? Was it the cane condition or the drunk condition? As you can see, the cane condition actually received more help. You take 52, right? 52 over here, so this is cane condition 52, plus the 7, plus the 5, plus the 1. You get 52 plus 5 is 57, 57 plus 7 is 64, 64 plus 1 is 65, right? So 65 cases where you get that. If you count the drunk one, it's just 5 plus 4, 9, 9 plus 90 is 28, 28 plus is 38, right? So it's obviously lower. Okay. Now let's look at race. Between blacks and whites, who was likely to receive more help? Was the whites. White received more help. How do we calculate that? Under the white victims column, 57, 24. 7 and 24. Yeah, correct. 57, 24. You get 81. Yeah, 81. Okay. Now that we know people help. So the previous slide is basically telling us, hey guys, actually, a lot of trials, people are offering help. The question is, how many people help? Right? So we know people are offering help, but is it a lot of people? Is it a few people? How many people? So look at another one. Total non-model trials where help was received was 81 out of 84 trials. Right? So there were a total of 84 non-model trials. Help was given, right, on 81 of them. Okay. On 80% of the 81 trials, 2, 3, or more Good Samaritans helped. Right? So let me break that down. There are 84 trials, right, without model, so non-model trials. 84 non-model. Where's my cursor? I don't know why my cursor has gone away for a while. Where is it? Okay, anyway, sorry. Okay, so basically what's happening is that, where's my The screen brush. Okay, hopefully it comes back later. I have to activate it manually. So basically what they're saying is that on 80% of those 81 trials, 2, 3 or more Good Samaritans help, right? Which is very encouraging, right? So it shows that on the majority of the trials, more than one person offers help. There was no significant difference of this between blacks or whites or cane or drunk, right? For numbers of helpers who helped after the first helper. So what happened was someone goes and helps, and then after that, there's no difference in the number of people who go and help, right? Why only non-model trials? Well, the reason why is because the model acts actually differently from how normal people help. The model makes the victim sit up and appear to need help. Others put them in a seat or make them stand, right? So what they're saying is that if you were to just use the model conditions, it's not very accurate to measure because the model puts them into a sitting position and then pretends to be needing help, right? Which is obviously a problem as a confounding variable because you want people just help, right? And then if you're going to appear as if you need help, you're probably going to get more people helping, right? So, that's kind of the conundrum. So to prevent that, they just said, okay, let's use all non-model trials. So there are no models involved. Let's see how fast or how slow people help, okay? So after one person helps, we can see evidence that other people come to help. That's great, right? But why? One person goes and helps already. Why does the other person need to come? Well, it's very simple. First helper overrides cognitive and emotional differences in the observers, right? Just add an animation here. Before I forget. Okay, so first helper overrides cognitive and emotional differences. As you saw in the video in the beginning of my chapter, right, there was a guy who went to help and then another lady who seemed nervous at first came to see if he's alright, right? So the thing is, everybody has preferences, right? Sometimes you prefer your own race, sometimes you prefer people who are white, black, or you prefer people who are less violent and stuff like that. So if you go and help first, you actually override the cognitive and emotional differences in others, right? Other people might be prejudiced, racist, feel ashamed at seeing their friends do this, and that's why the first helper overrides that. Basically say, you know what, it's okay to help this person. The victim's response also is usually passive towards the first helper. So in this experiment, after the model goes and helps them, the victim is passive. They don't react. They don't act like they're drunk. They don't act like they're angry or something like that. They just, they're quite neutral. So that's good. Why? Because it reassures people. It reduces fears of the observers about the victim. Right. So observers obviously don't want to approach someone who's going to kill them. And if they, then even if that person who's going to kill them needs help, they're probably not going to help. Right. But if you can prove that the person you're helping is passive and they don't mean to do any harm, they appear less dangerous, then more people are willing to help, right? So the reason why they're passive is because the first helper goes and helps and they don't get bitten, That's how they determine it. Thirdly, people may feel they are helping the helper rather than the victim. So this is interesting thought, right? As you saw in the first video, right, when I showed at the beginning, right? So the guy was lying down on the staircase. A woman walked past. She looked like she wanted to help him, but she didn't. In the end, a guy had to go and help, and then the woman came in. So what happens is that we believe that, or rather the researchers believe that after one person goes and helps, you can then go and help as well. And you're not actually helping the victim, you're actually helping the model, right? Which is a lot easier to do, right? If one person goes, it's easier for me to help that person, than to help the victim. Okay? But the problem with the study is that there's not enough data on each of these specific points to be able to examine these possibilities, right? So there's a lack of data. Now, quick question. Who helped more? Males or females? What do you think? Males or females? Think about it. The answer is... So let's look at the characteristics of spontaneous first helpers. So these are people who helped first without the model intervention. We know people help, but who helps first? 81 spontaneous first helpers, right? So these are 81 people who went to help before the model come in. Gender-wise, also before we decide on which gender helped the most, you also have to realize the percentage of people in the critical area, right? So there were only about 60% of males in the critical area, but that also means that the gender is almost equally distributed in the critical area, right? So for every around 3 to 4 males, there's 2 to 3 females, right? Approximately there, right? Which is a good thing, because if they are equally balanced, that means that I should see results which are equally balanced as well, right? So I should see sometimes males are helping, sometimes females are helping in equal proportion. But what they found was actually 90% of the first helpers, which was 81 people, are males, right? 90% of helpers are males. Only 10% of the spontaneous first helpers were females, right? In conclusion, males are more likely to help than females. That's a basic conclusion, right, from Piliavin study, right? Here we can see another table. What does the table say? Read the title for yourself. It says, Spontaneous Helping of Cane and Drunk by Race of Helper and Race Victim. Okay, I usually have a drawing tool. I don't know why my drawing tool has suddenly disappeared. Okay, yay, I got it back. Yay, I can draw again, right? So what is it? Spontaneous helping of cane and drunk by race and helper and race victim. By race of helper and race of victim, right? So here we can see the race of the helper, same as victim or different. So either white, 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 black, black, white, or black, black, right? So same as victim can be black, black, white, white, and here is black, white, black. Oh god, that's such a tongue twister. Black, white, or white, black. Okay. Then we look at the white victims here. Cane, drunk, total. So let's look at a white victim, right? So a white guy who falls down in the cane condition, acts like he's sick. How many spontaneous helping from same as victim? So we saw 34 from white on white, right? So this is white to white, 34. Black to white, only 20. So same race, more likely to help their own race. Different race, slightly less help is given. Slightly, very slight tendency. If you actually look at the totals, sorry, so I can show you the totals. So if a white person was helping, 44 times they would help. If it was a black person, only 21 was given, right? In the case of the black victim, total was 88, which means that if you are white or black, it doesn't matter, you're helping anyway, equal amounts, right? Let's look at the results. So the race of the 81 first helpers, right? What was the racial composition of the car, right? Remember, 45% of the whole car are black, 55% are white. So I expect to see an equal racial distribution similar to this, right? Similar for the gender, right? 60% are males, so I would assume 60% of people helping are males, but it was not true. It was 90% of males who were helping. So what are we going to see for race? 64% of the first helpers were white, right? So for the conditions, 64% of first helpers, 81 people, are white. This was not significantly different from the 55% trained composition. So we expect 55% people to help, but we got 64. This 64 to 55 is not significantly different from each other. Okay, that means that pretty much, basically what it's saying, if it's not significantly different, it's basically saying the composition of the car, the composition of the people in the train car, and the results that they got here are similar. Okay, now, are you more likely to help someone who is in the same race as you? What do you think? If you see an emergency and someone falls down, would you help someone if they are the same race as you? If it was a different race, would you be as willing to help them or not? What do you think, right? So there was an interesting but not significant trend. Interesting but non-significant. Okay, so let's see what was this non-significant trend. Amongst cane victims, white victims were helped 55% by white helpers, which is good, right? Black people helped 45% by black helpers. So this is good. Remember, this follows the train composition. If you are a cane victim, so this guy, for example, is a cane guy, right? He's using a cane, right? If he falls down, 55% of the white people are going to help him. And if it was a black victim, 45% of black people were going to help him, right? So that's a good thing because it follows the composition of the train. This is similar to train distribution, no difference, right? However, the difference, the interesting finding is for the drunk victims. Own race members are more likely to help. So if it's a white guy who's drunk and falls down, white people are more likely to help. If it's a black guy who's drunk and falls down, a black person is more likely to help. The problem with this is that only one black person was a stooge who acted as a victim, right? Why is this a problem? It's a problem because only one person. You should have at least two stooges, to act. Because why? If that one person has an unpleasant personality, let's say for example, then obviously people are not going to help, right? If you're in an emergency and you act like a stubborn person, then nobody wants to help you, right? So, of course, we don't know that for sure. We don't know the personality of this actor, right? But the differences could be due to his personality since he was the only one. You should have multiple, right? For the white victim, there are two, at least two. But the latency of help offered to him fell in between the latency of other teams. So remember, there's team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4. There are 4 teams of 4 students. They're all collecting data. Team 1, team 2 was, I believe, the cane condition. Team 3, team 4 was drunk. And team 3 has the black student, if I remember correctly. I think team 2 or 3. But anyway, the team that had the black student who was acting as the victim, even though they only had one, right? So the results may not be accurate. The timing for that student was in between the timing for other teams. So that's a good thing because it means it's going to be there somewhere in the average area. Now, why help your own race, particularly for the drunk condition? As we saw in the cane condition, it doesn't seem like people care, right? What race you are, people are just going to be willing to help. But when you're drunk, more likely your own race helps you. Why? Right? Ask yourself this question: which situation is easier to give help in? When people are drunk or when they're just holding a cane and they fall down? Right? Personally, for me, even if I saw someone of the same race as me fall down and they act like they're drunk, I'm not going to help them, right? Simply because I don't want to endanger my life, and they could be dangerous or wild. Whereas if someone is holding a walking stick and falls down, immediately I'll go and help, regardless of what race they are, right? So the cane victim is less problematic, is less complicated, right? Not complicated by other emotions. Just a guy who doesn't look too well falls down. It's very simple, right? It's easier for people to give help regardless of race because it's not complicated. The drunk victim, however, is more complicated because there's a possibility of danger. If someone is drunk, there's a possibility they might hit you, lash out at you, right? And also, they experience complicated emotions like fear, disgust, blame when they're looking at a victim who's drunk. They might feel afraid he's going to attack them. They might feel disgust that he got himself drunk. They might blame him and say, it's his fault for getting drunk. I don't want to help him, right? So these are reasons why, people of different races are not inclined to help, but people of the same race may help if they sympathize, right? So I put it here. More sympathy and trust from same race helpers, which is why same race people are more likely to help same race victims. Okay. Help is more often given to drunk victims after time has passed. So that's an interesting fact that they noticed. If it's a short period of time, nobody gives help. But after a longer period of time, people are more willing to give help to drunk victims, right? After they've had some time to think about it. Interesting, there was a parallel research that was actually done in another study by Black and Rice, right? Or Reese, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It was done on police officers. They wanted to study the behavior of police officers towards blacks and whites, right? Sober individuals had no police prejudice against whether you were black or whether you were white. So if you were sober, you're not drinking alcohol, you're just driving, and the policeman stops you, he would treat you the same way. There was no difference between treating a black person or a white person. However, if people were drunk, guess what? There was a lot more prejudice against them because they were drunk, right? So they judged them more harshly, right? In fact, 2 times more prejudice against black people when black people were drunk, right? So if you want to be treated equally and fairly, it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, just don't drink alcohol. Finish, right? Okay. Now, let's look at this modeling effects. So, remember the video I showed you where one guy goes and helps, right? And then a woman comes in. Whereas if nobody goes and helps, people are just lying there for minutes and minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and nobody helps, right? So the modeling effects here is basically referring to this. When the model helps, how does that affect helping behavior, right? The model helps, and we know it affects them. How does it affect them? Does it make people respond faster or slower? So you can see here, frequency of help as a function of early versus late and adjacent versus critical area program models. Okay, so let's see. Now, it wasn't an extensive analysis because there are too few cases, but they did some analysis on the drunk-only conditions. So all the numbers you see here are only from the drunk conditions, critical area models versus adjacent area models. There was no significant difference. What does that mean? It doesn't matter whether you're located in a critical area. It doesn't matter whether you're located in an adjacent area. The amount of help that you influence in others is the same. So there's no significant differences. But if you are an early model versus a late model, the early model got significantly more help than the late model. So what does that mean? It doesn't matter what area of, remember the train car? There's 2 areas, the critical and the adjacent. It doesn't matter what area they're standing in, right? The help that they get from others is the same. But it matters whether they are early or late. Early is before 70 seconds, right? And then late is after 150 seconds, right? So, yeah. So, early, late. What can we understand from this? We know there's a significant difference. So, let's look at early and late together, right? Early, late, okay? So, under early, 9 people received help, comparing both areas. Under late, 7 people received help. Excuse me, I had not 9 people received help, 9, in 9 conditions, okay, let me just double check this. Okay, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's a frequency, so it should be okay. So let me phrase it this way. There were 9 occasions where this 9 actually comes from this 4 and this 5. Maybe I should use the 4 and 5, it's easier. Let's say the model is standing in the critical area, which is where the victim falls down. Okay. Now they happen to be an early model, which means that they help within 70 seconds after they fall. So victim down, falls down. 70 seconds pass, the early model comes in, right? In total, when the early model came in, they received help from other people 4 times, right? So that's why it's 4. And then in the adjacent area, early model came in, they received help 5 times, right? Adding them together, you get 9 times from the early model, right? So what they're saying is that when the early model helps, people are more likely to help as well because they're early, right? In this one, the early model got 4 versus 2, so early model got more help. In the adjacent area, early model got 5 times people helped, 1 time if they were late, so early model got more help. And both areas you can compare 9 to 3 or 9 to 7 in total, right? Okay, so that's basically it. All you have to understand from this is whether the model stands in critical or adjacent area has no significant difference. When if the model is early versus late, the earlier model gets more help. So the earlier someone is given help, the more likely others are going to help them as well. If you see someone fall down and for the next half an hour nobody helps him, then very likely everybody's going to ignore him. But if someone falls down and within the next 3 seconds you go and help, other people are going to offer help as well. So that's how it works. Okay, let's look at some other responses. Okay, leaving the car. Nobody left the entire train car, so they all stayed there in the train car here, in the critical and adjacent area. Everybody stayed where they were, right? But on 21 out of the 103 trials, 34 people left the critical area. So critical area, remember, where the victim falls down. In 21 trials, a total of 34 people left. So it's not 34 for each trial, it is 34 for all the trials. Okay, just to clarify that. Okay, in which condition, drunk or cane, did more people leave? So if you look at the picture on the right, this is actually one of the previous tables. It's not the previous table. It's not the immediately previous table before the slide. It is actually the table that I showed a lot earlier, right? A lot earlier in the results. And if you look at the title, what does it say here? Percentage of trials in which +1 persons left the critical area. So which condition, drunk or cane, did more people leave, right? You want to see the percentage of people who are more likely to leave. Which one was it? In cane or drunk? Cane or drunk? So let's look at it, right? So you see under the cane one, what do we get? Let me rephrase that. The answer is drunk. How do we come to that answer? Sorry. Okay, how do we come to the answer? Remember, you want to see where more people left. This is 1 persons left the critical area. So which one has more? Drunk has 42 plus 60. It's 102. Compared to the cane, it's only 40. Drunk here is 20 plus 0, so that's 20. Compared to the cane is 4 plus 14 is 18, right? So here the drunk, more people left the critical area. The drunk here, more percentage of people left the critical area, right? So drunk condition, more people are willing to leave, right? If someone falls down, they act like they're drunk. In which condition, either less than 70 or more than 70, did more people leave, right? So earlier, we looked cane versus drunk. People are more likely to leave the immediate area if the person acts like they're drunk. But what about timing? Before and after 70 seconds, right? The answer is after 70 seconds, people are more likely to leave, right? Look at the numbers, 40, 42, 60. Here's 4, 14, 20, all below the 40, 42, 60. So that means that people are more likely to leave after 70 seconds. Okay, why? Why do we get results like this? Oops, sorry, did I not put a why here? Okay, I guess you have to think. So think about the why as I drink some water. Why do people leave when people are drunk? Why do people leave after 70 seconds? Okay, the drunk one is fairly easy, right, to understand. If someone falls in front of you and they act like they're drunk and they're covered with the smell of alcohol, you would most likely not want to be around them, right? You would most likely want to leave because they're making you feel uncomfortable and you're not helping them. So you just leave out of that discomfort. After 70 seconds is this. Most people think that, oh, it's less than, within 70 seconds I'll leave. No, it's actually after. Why do people leave after? It's because there's been so long a time of tension in the train car, that people just want to leave, right? Because there's just so much tension there. When something awkward or bad happens to you, and it doesn't go away, it just stays there, it just gets more and more awkward and really, really awkward. You're talking to someone and it's just an awkward silence that continues, right? And you want to get it done and over with. And so that's why after a longer period of time, people then leave because they're not feeling comfortable, right? Now, guess which condition would people give more comments, right? Remember, they measured comments for people. Which condition do you think would generate more comments from the people? Like, hey, oh my gosh, that guy fell down. Oh yeah, I just fell down. Something like that, right? So we also have this table. It's from the previous table as well. Just this time, if you look at it, it says, once again, my drawing thing has disappeared. I don't know why. This is a wonderful tool. It's called Screen Brush. It's available on Macs. I'm not sure why, whether it's available on other computers as well. But anyway, so comments were basically observers speaking to the person next to them, right? Oh, once again it's gone missing. Oh my goodness me. Usually this is absolutely fine. I don't know why out of all days today it's giving me so many problems. So sorry guys. So comments were observers speaking to the person next to them, right? So the observers were two females. They also noted down spontaneous comments and actions by people, right? So which condition do you think, the drunk condition or the cane condition, got more comments? So look here, it says percentage of trials on which 1+ comments were recorded, right? So more comments, drunk or cane? Let's look at that. 21-0, 80-50. Obviously drunk has more. 60-0, 170, right? So obviously drunk got more, right? So quite clearly the drunk condition got more. Now you try and count which condition, less than 70 seconds or more than 70 seconds, got more comments. Which condition? Quite clearly you can see immediately there, it is after 70 seconds, right? 60, 170, right? 160 plus 70 is what? 200. 110? Is it 210? 310? Oops, there goes my mathematics. 60 plus 70 is 110. 110 plus 100 is 210. Yeah, I'm right, 210, right? Compared to this, 21 plus 50 plus 70 is less. 21 plus 50 is 71. 71 plus this is 151, right? So a lot less than 210. So more comments, more percentage of comments under the more than 70 seconds. Again, why? Same like before, people feel discomfort, right? They feel uncomfortable being in the presence of someone who's drunk and fallen on the floor. And so after a longer period of time, they make comments about it, right? To try and perhaps, reduce their stress, mental stress. Or perhaps talking to each other, hoping that other people would validate their need for inaction, right? So for example, someone falls down, you don't help them, 70 seconds goes by and you still don't help them, you talk to someone and say, hey, should we help? No, I don't think we need to help now. Because that person fell down and they're drunk, it's their fault. Oh yeah, it's their fault, I don't want to help. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to comment and give comments and try to justify to themselves why they don't need to help. Okay. Comments from women. They only noted comments from women. They didn't seem to note comments from men. I'm not sure why. Maybe men just didn't give comments. But some of the things were, it's for men to help him. Right? This is very typical for the women inside the carriage. When someone falls down, she says, oh, it's for men to help. It's not for me. I don't help. I wish I could help him, but I'm not strong enough. That's another thing that the women said. I never saw this kind of thing before. I don't know where to look. So again, they're feeling uncomfortable. Another person said, you feel so bad that you don't know what to do. Right? So again, they're trying to just rationalize that. I just don't know. I don't know how to help them. They're too heavy. I can't help them. Only a man should help them. Right? So they're rationalizing and justifying their discomfort. Right? By saying it's okay for me not to help because other people should. Okay, let's go back to the diffusion of responsibility and recap what it means and test it with our current study, right? In past research, Darley and Latane predicted and found as the number of bystanders increased, help decreases and latency of time increases. What does this mean? More bystanders means the more people there are in a group, help goes down, latency of time, that means the longer it takes for people to give help, increases. But bystanders could not see each other or the victim. Right? Bystanders could not see each other or the victim in Darley and Latane's research and many other research. They replicated where bystanders could see each other but not the victim, only heard. This was the microphone and the earphones, right? So Darley and Latane, or Darley and Latane, I think, or Darley and Latane replicated this, where now bystanders can see each other but not the victim. Right? Sorry, that was in the this was not the earphones one. This was where they could see each other. The lady in distress, right? This was Darley, I think Darley and Latane. Okay, the present study is different because bystanders can see both the victim and each other. So that's unique. In past studies, they couldn't see either the victim or others, or they couldn't see just the victim. Now they can see both the victim and they can see each other as well. Right? Now, if you can see other people in the audience, in the bystanders, right, and the victim, do you think there would still be a diffusion of responsibility? Right? So according to Darley and Latane and Darley and Rodin, when they did the diffusion of responsibility experiment, they found that the bigger the group, the less help is given. But now, in Piliavin's study, when you can see each other and you can see the victim, what are we going to find? So they did two analyses to compare. Right? They compared the timing for all the males in the critical area, and they also compared natural versus hypothetical groups. Okay, I'll explain what these are slowly. It's a bit complicated. Let's take it slow. I might also find it a bit hard. Now, here you see the mean and median latencies as a function of number of males in the critical area. So what does this basically say? They grouped up the males in the critical area and they compared the timing, right? They took all the non-model trials and they separated males into critical area, either 1 to 3 males, critical area 4 to 6 males, or critical area when there's 7 males and above standing in the critical. So remember, the train car, there is a critical and an adjacent. In the critical area, either there was 1 to 3 males here, or in the critical area there were 4 to 6 males standing there, or in the critical area there were 7 males standing there. And then they wanted to see the mean and median seconds for people to help, right? If there are 1 to 3 males, will help come faster or slower? If there are 7 males, will help come faster or slower? What do you think, right? Latency for help is measured as the mean and the median. So there's M and MDN, which is here. Mean, for example, here 16, median is 7. Okay, go back and recap what does mean and median mean. What does mean and median mean? What does mean and median refer to? Okay, so question, which group helped the fastest? So look at the 3 groups there. 1 to 3 people, 4 to 6 people, 7 people and above. Which of these groups helped the fastest? Right, so look at the timing. What can you see? Which group do you think helped the fastest? Remember, fastest means the less amount of time. This is seconds, right? So you should look at the smallest number. It was the 7 males and above, right? If it was 1 to 3 males, people were willing to help 16 seconds. 7 males and above, 3 seconds. Someone falls down, oh no, I fell down. 1, 2, 3, okay, let me help you, right? Very fast. If it was 4 to 6, it was 20 seconds, right? So when it was slightly increased, took longer here. But 7 and above, 3 seconds, very fast. Which condition received help faster? Oops, I gave the answer away. The cane condition. So if you look here, there's the cane. Here's the drunk, right? If you add it all up, right, you will get the amount of seconds here is, I think the addition, the total is here, right? So 9, here the total is 97. Yeah, so look at the 2 totals. Total for cane, total for drunk. 9 seconds, 97 seconds. The total for cane was a lot faster. They only took 9 seconds on average to help. Okay. Now, some of you may ask, why only males? What about the females? Why are we always talking about males? Well, the reason why, given by the researchers, was that males were used as a reference group for spontaneous first helpers, right? They were just a reference group. Why were they reference groups? Because the total number of males in the critical area, which is 1 to 3, 4 to 6 or 7, was strongly related to the total passengers. And what they actually found was, they even found similar results, even if you use the total number of people instead of total number of males, right? They just happened to use males. I think primarily it's because males were more likely to give help anyway, right? Remember, we looked at the spontaneous first helpers, 90% of them were males, right? So males provide a better reference point rather than males and females. It's a lot easier if you just take the males, since most of the males helped anyway, right? So they are better for referencing. Okay. The problem here, however, and the problem is quite complicated, Darley and Latane pointed out, however, different sized real groups cannot be meaningfully compared to one another, since as group size increases, the likelihood that one or more persons will help also increases. So let me try to explain what they're saying here. It's a bit confusing. You may have to read it 3 or 4 times to get it sometimes. But what they're saying is that you cannot compare group 1 and group 2. For example, it's not meaningful for me to compare 1 to 3 people versus 7 people and above. It's not meaningful for me to compare these two groups. Why is it not meaningful? Because using common sense, a group that has more people obviously is going to have a higher percentage of people helping, right? Because they have more people. So there's obviously going to be more chances for people to help. For example, you think about it this way. If you go fishing in a lake, right, and there are 2 lakes, there's 1 lake over here, there's 1 lake over here. This lake has 7 fish. This lake has 77 fish. In which lake are you more likely to catch more fish? Obviously the lake with 77 fish, right, compared to the lake with only 7. Right, so you can't compare the real groups to one another, because as the group size increases, like 7 and above people, the likelihood that 1 or more persons will help also increases. So this can be a bit of a problem when comparing. So how do we solve this problem? We cannot compare the real groups to each other. What groups shall we have? Ta-da! The solution is to use hypothetical groups. And we came up with this graph, or rather the researchers did. I'll try and explain it. It's a bit confusing, but we'll take it slow. So, because we cannot compare one natural group to another natural group, we compare a natural group to a hypothetical group, right? So they took the latencies, which is the timing, from natural groups, which were the males in the critical area, right? And then they took the latencies of hypothetical groups, which was a combination of 2 smaller groups of males in the critical area, right? But it was a combination. Here is just 1 group of people. Here is a combination of 2 smaller groups. Now, this provided more control over the... To have more control over the analysis, they narrowed it down to only the cane trials, only white victims, and only the male first helpers, only in the critical area. So they had these conditions just so that they said, according to them, they wanted to have more control over the analysis. Rather than do every single condition, let's just focus on one condition, right? So it's more focused, right? So the most frequent of natural groups of males was 3 males in a group. There were 6 of these. What does that mean? That means in the critical area, adjacent area here, critical area, which we're looking at only critical, there were 6 groups of 3 males. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, until we get 6 of those groups. So that was the most frequently occurring, right? Secondly, we had 5 groups of 7 males. So 7 guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you had 5 groups of 7. Thirdly, you can see the latency of help was noted for each of the groups. Latency of help was noted for each group. So basically what they're saying is that when there were 3 males, how many seconds did it take for them to help? When there are 7 males, how many seconds did it take for them to help? Right? And then, how do we create a hypothetical group? Remember, hypothetical is a combination of 2 groups, right? So, 3 hypothetical males in a group, and there were 4 of these groups. What they did was did I not write it down? Okay, so there's a natural 3 group and a natural 7 group. So I need to compare natural 3 to hypothetical 3 and hypothetical 7. How do I do it? I create a hypothetical 7 male group. How do you create a hypothetical 7 male group? You take 6 males plus 1, right? So this is 2 groups of males. 6 males together plus 1 male, you get 7 male. If it's just 3, maybe you take 2 plus 1, something like that, right? So that's just to show you that, you for example, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 males in one group. You see 1 male over here in one group. You take both of them and you create a hypothetical 7 male group, right? And then what timing do you use? You use the shortest timing between the 2 groups. So for example, if it's 6 plus 1, so 6 guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over here, 6 over here, and then 1 guy over here. If these 6 responded in 5 seconds, and this 1 guy responded in 7 seconds, you would take the lower time, the 5 seconds. So whenever you take 2 groups and add them together, group 1 and group 2, whichever group scored the fastest time, that group time would be used as the latency for either the 3 hypothetical or the 7 hypothetical. Okay, another way of getting 7 is take 5 males plus 2, right? So that's another way of getting 7 people. The latency is the faster time between the 2 combined groups, right? If 5 males responded in 5 seconds and 2 males responded in 7, you take the 5 seconds one, right? Even though it's a hypothetical 7, you take the 5 seconds as the faster time. Okay, now, let's see this. Okay, so which group here had the most responses in the fastest time, right? So this graph can look quite confusing, but on the left side here we see proportion of groups responding, right? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, 60%, 100% of the groups responding, right? Seconds from occurrence of collapse to helping response from one member of the group, right? So this is when one person responds. This is proportion of the groups responding. How many of the groups proportionally responded? 60% of the groups? 100% of the groups? How long did it take? How many seconds? Right? The first point. Okay, so anyway. Yeah, okay, that's basically it. Yeah, the seconds it took for one person to respond and the proportion over time, right, for the percentage of the groups to respond, right? There were some had 6 groups of 5, 4 groups of whatever it was in the previous slide, and so on and so forth, right? Now here are the comparison between the groups: hypothetical 3%, natural 3%, hypothetical 7, and natural 7. What all you need to know is when you compare the hypothetical to the natural, who's faster, who's slower. So now I'm asking which group had the most response in the fastest time. So we go up here, from here, all the different times, right? Which one had the most? Well, this one goes up the sharpest, right? 60% here in 1 second. So that's really good. What group is this? It's the line dot. Can you see here? The line dot group. What is it? That's the natural 7% group. The natural 7% group responded in the fastest time with the highest amount of response, right? Which group had the least response in the slowest time? So the slowest time and the least response. Look at all the 3 are up here. This one is the slowest one, right? Only 20%, and it took 6 seconds, 6 to 7 seconds, right? So this was the slowest response and the lowest percentage. Okay. Which group was that? It was the dot line here. Dot line. Hypothetical 3% group, right? So what does this show you? The smaller group responded slower. People responded slower. The natural 7% group, people responded a lot faster, and higher proportion of them responded. Okay. Why are Piliavin's results different from Darley and Latane? Darley and Latane said the bigger the group, the less help is received. But Piliavin said no, the bigger groups, more help is received. Right? One of the reasons why might be the conditions of the study. In Darley and Latane, the bystanders can't see the victim. In Piliavin, they can see the victim. It's more real to them. And you cannot conclude that there was no emergency. In Darley and Latane, you can't see the victim. You might conclude, I don't think it's an emergency. Maybe he's just playing a prank. Maybe it's just a sound. Right? I don't think it's an emergency. Right? But now you can see the victim, so there's no way you can conclude it's not an emergency. Right? Bystanders are also overwhelmed with other considerations. For example, when they see a victim fall down, they're overwhelmed. Oh my God, someone's fell down. I should help. Should I help? Should I not help? So there's a lot more things going through their head that they need to figure out what to do. Right? There's a lot more pressure for them to do something. And when there are more people in the group, the increase of not wanting to help is slower than the increase in the likelihood that one of the observers will help. Okay? So what this basically means is that as the group size increases, so from 3 to 7, right? When there are more people, 7 people in a group, more and more people in a group, the increase of not wanting to help from the diffusion of responsibility is slower than the increase in the likelihood that one of the observers will help, right? So we know that the diffusion of responsibility says the bigger the group, bigger, people will help slower, right? But what's happening is here is that as the group size increases, this not wanting to help is slower than the likelihood or that someone might help, right? So there are 2 possibilities. I don't want to help versus someone's going to help. The likelihood of not wanting to help is slower than the likelihood of someone saying, oh, I better go and help, right? So that's what's happening as the group size increases, which slightly goes against the diffusion of responsibility. So in conclusion of the study, someone who looks ill will likely receive help more versus a drunk person, right? There is some tendency of same race helping, and it's increased if it's a drunk victim, right? So people usually help their own race, white to white, black to white. If it's a drunk victim, more likely you're going to get help from your own race first. Slight tendency. Help is also faster and more frequent from larger groups versus smaller groups. This goes against the diffusion of responsibility, right? Because Piliavin said larger groups go more, Darley and Latane said smaller groups get faster help. So they found a different result. What else? The longer the emergency continues without help being offered, the model has less impact on helping behavior. So you remember the model, right? The late models can't get as much help as the early models. We saw the early models, right? The faster the model acts, the more help they receive from others, right? As we saw earlier in the video also, remember, the guy goes first and helps. Immediately, 2-3 seconds later, another woman comes, right? The earlier a model acts, the faster the help is received, right? But this also has to do with time. The longer the emergency continues, so more than 70 seconds, the model has less impact on helping behavior. The slower it takes for the model to go and help, less people are willing to help them. Observers are more likely to leave an immediate area to avoid the situation, right? So the longer the emergency continues, more than 70 seconds, people leave the critical area, right? Because they're uncomfortable. They also make a lot more comments after a longer time, which relate to their actions. Oh, I can't help him, it's a man's job. He's too heavy for me, I'm not strong enough, right? So anything to justify or rationalize why you're not helping them, even after such a long time, you start making more comments, right? Because you feel more uncomfortable. Okay. What else do we see? Okay, so using the data from past research as well as the data from Piliavin's own study, Piliavin came up with a model. This is not a person acting. This model is like a theoretical model, right, in theory. How do people respond to emergency situations? We want to understand what are the steps involved. Step number 1, observing an emergency creates a state of emotional arousal in the bystander. So if you're watching an emergency, someone's falling down, you feel a state of emotional arousal, right? This might include emotions like fear, disgust, sympathy, or a combination of all these three, right? You see someone fall down the staircase because they're drunk, you might feel disgusted, but you might also feel some sympathy for them because it's painful, right? This increased arousal, or what increases arousal, are factors such as you empathize with the victim, right? So you have a lot of empathy for them. For example, let's say the same race as you, you're white, the victim is white, you feel more empathy because you relate to them. You're black, the victim is black, you feel more empathy, you relate to them. So this increases your arousal. The closer you are to the emergency, so if you're standing next to someone who falls down, you feel more arousal compared to if you're standing 10 feet away. The longer the emergency continues without a helper, someone falls down and nobody helps for 70 seconds, 100 seconds, you feel more arousal, increased state of emotional arousal, right? These feelings that you might feel or other feelings similar. What reduces a person's arousal? If you go and help someone, someone falls down, you feel arousal, like, oh my gosh, you fell down, I go and help you. Then the arousal goes down because you've helped the person, right? Or going to get help. Hey, help, we need help, someone come and help. Then your arousal goes down because you're going to do something about it, right? Or you just leave the scene. Like people in the critical area, they just left the scene, right, to reduce their arousal, right? Or you can also reject the victim as undeserving. That fellow is drunkard. He keeps drinking alcohol. It's his fault. He should know better, right? So I don't deserve to help him. So you reduce your arousal by justifying why you don't need to do it. Step 2 is the response that you choose is based on what is known as the cost and reward matrix. This is about balancing the cost versus the reward. Which one do you want to choose? Higher cost, lower cost? High reward, lower reward? So what are the things? The cost of helping. There's a cost to helping, right? Doing work, it's a costly thing. What does it cost you? Effort. You have to pick someone up and make them sit up, that effort is required. Embarrassment, especially if they're drunk, you might feel embarrassed to help them. You might feel disgusted to help them. And there might be possible harm, especially for the drunk victim. You don't know if they're going to swing the bottle at you, right? What's the cost of not helping? If you want to just stand at the side and don't help, you might blame yourself like, oh my gosh, someone should help him. I should help him. I know I can do it, but I don't feel like helping him. I blame myself. Or you might feel judged by others, right? If you help someone, it's like, that person's going to help the drunk guy. Maybe he's drunk. He's a drunkard too, right? You might get judged by others. So wrong. The cost of not helping is that you get judged by others for not helping, right? If I'm sitting next to someone and someone falls down and I don't help them, people might judge me and say, wow, that guy's so selfish, he doesn't want to help the person next to him, right? And so to prevent that judgment, I might want to help, right? Now, what are rewards of helping? You help someone sit up, guess what? You get praise. You praise yourself, well done, I did a good job. Victim praises you, well done, you did a good job, thank you. Other people praise you in trade, well done, you did a great job, right? What are the rewards for not helping? You get to continue other activities. For example, let's say you're reading a book in the train, someone falls down, you glance at them, and you go back to your book and just keep reading. That's a reward to yourself because you don't have to stop reading your book, right? Sounds selfish, right? As you can see, the main motivation in this model is selfishness, right? Model is selfishness. So you can see it's not about altruism or helping others. That's not the driving force behind this particular theoretical model, right? It's not about altruism and helping people. It's about selfishness. Why? It's about the selfish desire to reduce an unpleasant emotional state. If someone drunk falls down in front of you and you feel embarrassed or disgusted or whatever, you want to reduce the increased emotional arousal, right? You want to reduce it so that you don't feel uncomfortable. So that's what's pushing you. It's a selfish desire to reduce your unpleasant emotions. It's not because you're an angel that you want to help people, right? So let's explain the results using the model. Why is the drunk guy helped less than the cane guy? Why do people help the drunk guy a lot less compared to the cane guy? Because the cost of helping is higher. There's more disgust when dealing with someone who's drunk. The cost, or physical harm, perhaps. The cost of not helping is lower, right? Because there's less self-blame. Why? If someone is drunk, it's their fault. So you don't blame yourself for not helping them. It's his fault. I don't blame myself. There's also less judgment from others because the drunk victim is responsible for his drunkenness. Right? If someone is drunk and falls down, nobody expects you to help him because it's his fault he got drunk, right? So that's why the drunk person is helped less compared to the cane person. Why do women help less than men? Because the cost of helping for women is higher. There's a lot more physical effort involved. The cost of not helping is lower. It's not a woman's role to help. If a big man falls down, it's not a woman's place to help. It's a man's job, right? Society teaches these kind of things, chivalry and stuff like that, right? So a woman doesn't have to worry about not helping because it's not her job, right? So that's why women help less than men, maybe, right? Why do drunk people get more help from their own race? Why is it their own race helps? Because the cost of not helping is you get judgment if you don't help your own race. Let's say I'm black and the person falling in front of me is also black, and I'm standing next to them and they fall down. Everybody else in the train will look at me. Why? Because I'm the same race as them. I should have more sympathy over my own race fellow members and help them up compared to other people. So the cost of me not helping is that people are going to judge me and say, oh man, that guy is the same race as his friend who fell down, but he's not helping, right? So there's a judgment there, right? The cost of helping, however, is more fear in helping someone of a different race, hence same races help each other, right? So if it's a black guy who falls down and I'm a black guy, I'm more willing to help him up. But if I'm a white guy, there's a cost because it's a lot more dangerous for me to interact with someone who's not the same race as me, which is why it's easier for the same race to help their own race. It's a more dangerous thing if a different race helps a different race, right? There's no diffusion responsibility on cane trials. Why? Because the cost of helping is fairly low. What does this mean, no diffusion of responsibility? It means that on cane trials, pretty much almost 100% of the time people are willing to give help. They never had much problem getting help in the cane trials. People are very easily helped. Why? Because the cost of helping is low. It's fairly straightforward. Someone's holding a walking stick, they fall down. Oh, excuse me, sir, can I help you stand up again? Right? It's a very straightforward thing. There's no danger there. The cost of not helping is also high because you blame yourself more. If someone falls down and they don't look that sick or drunk or disgusting, just help them up. It's very simple. If you don't help them up and just look at them, people will judge you more, right? So there's more self-blame. You judge yourself more, right? Because it's something that's very straightforward to help people with. Okay. Now, possible bodily harm. Higher cost of helping, people are less likely to help. So what does this mean? When there's a possibility that someone's going to harm you, like the drunk victim, right? There's a higher cost because people are less likely to help if someone's going to swing an alcoholic bottle at me and perhaps injure me. I'm not going to help them, right? Previous research also assumed that someone had already helped, so the cost of not helping is reduced. What does this mean? In previous research that was done, you assume that someone else is going to help or someone else has already helped the person. So that's why I don't need to go and see what's wrong, or I don't need to help the person because the cost of my not helping has been reduced. Someone else has already helped them. I don't have to worry about it anymore, right? This was found by Darley and Latane. Assume emergency is minor, so the cost of not helping is reduced. For example, this was by Darley and Latane, right? So if you hear someone, I think that Darley and Latane was the lady in distress, so you hear some woman falling down and getting injured, but if you don't really hear it and it doesn't seem very bothersome to you, it doesn't seem very serious to you, so you think it's a minor problem, right? It's just a minor thing, right? The emergency is minor. Because the emergency is such a small thing, don't worry, we don't need to help, right? The cost of not helping is reduced. It doesn't matter if I don't help because it's just a small fall. She'll get up again, right? But if I can see the emergency and the person falls down and doesn't get up, then I know it's more serious, right? I can't justify it away. Okay. What about the effects of time? The emergency continuing longer, observers are more emotionally aroused, right? And therefore, most likely by then, the observers have tried to reduce their arousal, right? So when the guy falls down for more than 70 seconds, more than 150 seconds, people feel more emotionally aroused by then, right? As the time goes on, they're like, oh my God, someone should help me, someone should help, someone should help, someone should help, someone should help. They're feeling more and more aroused, but by then, they're already going to try and do something to reduce the arousal. What do they do? Oh, sorry. Let let me rephrase that, because they've already tried to reduce their arousal either by leaving the critical area or making comments, that is probably why the late model got less help than the early model. Remember, the model who acts late doesn't get as much help, but the model who acts early gets a lot more help. Why? Because the emotional arousal here hasn't been reduced yet when it's early. But for the late model, the emotional arousal has already been reduced by a lot because they've already employed strategies to reduce it, such as giving comments and stuff. If arousal is not reduced, what happens? People are more likely to leave the immediate area, and people are a lot more likely to make comments, right, to reduce their emotional arousal. Okay, and when they make comments and leave the area, is to reduce self-blame and justify themselves for not helping. No, it's okay. It's a man's job. I don't need to help. I can't do it. I'm not strong enough. Stuff like that, right? So they discuss, make comments to justify why it's okay not to help. Okay, and this helps to reduce the arousal. And by the time more than 70 seconds, when the arousal is, or more than 150 seconds or whatever it is, when the arousal is already reduced, that's why the late model can't get any help from other people. But before 70 seconds, under 70 seconds, they have not left the area, they haven't made comments, they haven't reduced their arousal. So the early model, when someone goes and helps, other people come in and help quickly. Right? Now let's evaluate some of the strengths and weaknesses of this study. Okay, just briefly evaluate. There's quite a fair bit of details here we can go through. So reliability. What about the study was reliable or non-reliable, right? First of all, is it a laboratory experiment? No, it's a field experiment. So there are a lot of things you cannot control, a lot of extraneous variables, and that reduces reliability because you cannot control every single thing that the participants experience. Yes, you can control certain things like the way the victims dressed was controlled and standardized. The way they acted was controlled and standardized. What else was there? The train stations that they used was controlled and standardized and so on. So there is some level of reliability there that you can talk about, right? Such as the acting, the dressing, the trains, and the procedure. But there are things in the natural environment they cannot control, right? So that reduces the reliability a bit. What about validity? Remember, validity is about accuracy, how accurate, how inaccurate something is. Remember, what type of experiment is it? It's a field experiment. Field experiment is in a natural setting. Is that good validity or bad validity? Well, it's no such thing as good and bad. It's just higher or lower, right? So it's very high in terms of what? Ecological validity, EC, ecological validity. Ecological validity is when the situation in the experiment reflects that of real life. They did it in a real situation, subway station, right? So very, very high ecological validity, especially compared to other studies. So that's good. Participants are they aware of the study or not? Notice that there's no informed consent in this study, right? There's no debriefing. Nothing was done to tell the participants, hey, you're part of a study, but you don't know, right? So this increases validity. Why? Because people will act in a natural way. They don't expect what's going to happen, so they just react naturally, right? Before that, I think there was one more note on validity. I wanted to say also, okay. The problem with validity is that they did the experiment in the same train over a bunch of days, right? From 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the same train line. What's the problem with that? They assume that the people who come into the train are different every time, which for the most case is probably true. But these people are probably going to be traveling on the train regularly, right? And there is a possibility that the same people might overlap, right? There is a possibility. And that would reduce the validity. Why do you think it reduces the validity? If this, let's say I do the experiment on Monday, the drunk victim collapses, and there's guy A is watching it. And on Tuesday, guy A comes on the same train at the same time and sees another person fall down. What is guy A going to think? It's demand characteristics, right? He already guesses, they're doing an experiment, these college students, right? And so they're going to figure it out, and they're obviously not going to react in a natural way, right? So that can lower the validity of the study because of demand characteristics. Now let's talk about the sample. Now the sample has a very large size sample. I think it was about 4,450, come on, right? Okay, approximately 4,450 is the biggest sample in all our AS studies. Very large sample is always good because it's more generalizable, right? And also it consists of a variety of different people, right? From New York, a variety of different people on the train, right? Just general public and stuff like that. So that's good, more representative. But it is using what method of sampling? Opportunity sampling, right? Opportunity sampling is not representative sampling method. So you can't really use it to justify a representative sample because it's not random. Mainly because the people who use the train are probably a similar kind of person, right? People use the train, it's not just any Tom, Dick and Harry, it's probably the same person using the train, not as diverse as people might think, right? For example, when I was studying in university, I used to use the train in my first year of university. Every day, a train and a bus. And the most number of people who use the train and bus are students because we want to save money, right? So the sample, although it can be a lot of students, and that's good on one hand, on the other hand, it's not generalizable because it's all the same kind of person, students, right? In New York as well, you can't generalize to other countries and populations because it's just one area in New York. Okay, what about the data? What kind of data do we get? We got quantitative data and qualitative, which is great. Quantitative data, for example, they measured latency by time in seconds, right? So that's quantitative, it's objective, it's easy to calculate, measure, compare, right? And there's less bias involved, right? Because you're just calculating something using numbers. Also, they had two observers, which is good, right? Two observers, it's always good to have because one observer can't observe everything. So to make it more reliable, it's better to have two. They also collected qualitative data. What kind of qualitative data did they have? Remember the comments that were made by the women, right? So those are in-depth comments. They provide in-depth explanations to what's going on in the person mentally, right? The number of seconds people take to help don't explain the person's behavior, right? I just know that, this person was very slow to help. I don't know why. But the qualitative data explains why, because they justified for themselves, no, a man should help, not a woman, right? That's why women didn't help, right? So qualitative data is always very good, gives you an explanation for why people do what they do, what they were thinking of, and stuff like that, okay? Let's talk about the last point, ethics. What can we say about ethics in terms of evaluating strengths and weaknesses? I mentioned a bit of a hint earlier, right? Was there informed consent? No informed consent. They were all deceived in the study, right? Nobody knew that the stooge was just an actor falling down, right? They obviously probably assumed that it was someone really who needed help, right? So they had no informed consent. It's unethical because people have the right to know what they're participating in. Secondly, it's deception, fake emergency, which is again unethical because people should know what's happening to them or happening around them, and may have caused psychological distress. Why? Because someone falls down, you feel high emotional arousal. Oh my gosh, I hope he's okay, right? Psychological distress is a form of psychological harm, and that goes against a person's rights, right? They have the right to be protected from harm, therefore that was unethical for the researchers to do. Lastly, there was no debriefing, right? Where they should, after the experiment, tell the people the truth. Hey guys, by the way, we're college students, we're just doing a study, thank you for participating, here's a survey form where you can fill it up, and if you need any help with questions, you can ask us, something like that, right? There was no debriefing done, so we don't know how people felt after the experiment was over. Are they still anxious? Did they understand that this was just a study? Stuff like that. So all of that is quite unethical. Although arguably, I would think that someone just falling down, you notice that they received help immediately, and most people gave help quite fast. And once help is given, we saw earlier that emotional arousal goes down, right? So that psychological distress is at a minimum, especially because help is usually given quite quickly. But again, overall, the experiment is slightly unethical because of the lack of many protections that people usually do have in experiments. Okay, that's it for the Piliavin study. It's really, really long study, but hope you guys managed to catch the basics of the study. Do read the journal by yourself. There's a lot of other small footnotes in the journal, that explain the study in more detail. So please go and read that. If you want to buy my premium study notes, I am doing them on a donation basis for cognitive learning and social. I will be adding the biological chapter when I have time. I also have a few notes on assumptions, applications, and psychology being investigated. I also include past year papers and marking schemes from 2018-2020. It's a donation basis. I'm not charging at the moment. I want to, but I'm not going to yet, as long as I can survive. For those of you who don't know, I'm still unemployed. Unfortunately, I haven't got a job, and it's been quite tough during COVID-19, not having a job. But I know other people have it tough as well, so I'm just putting it as a donation. There was one person who emailed me and asked me how much is a decent donation. I said, $10, $10 is a fair amount, I think. Anything above that is generous, so do what you want. Just go to tinyurl.com/premium notes to fill out the form, and then email me your receipt. Right? You can pay via PayPal, local bank transfer. I even accept cryptocurrency, that's fine as well. That's me, MagicRoss7. You can follow me on Instagram if you want to. Some of my students from around the world. I have students from Ibiza, I have students from Pakistan, I have students from the UK. Everybody follows me, so I'm open to everybody. I love meeting my students online as well. So, drop me a message, say, hi, Mr. Ross, I follow your channel. It'll really make my day. And, if you have a testimonial to share, I might share it in my upcoming videos as well. Please help me out a lot by liking, commenting, and subscribing, or donating in any way or form, right? If you can't donate financially, I always tell people that just subscribing and sharing my video with all your friends and getting them to subscribe and like my videos on this channel really helps me a long way. I've just applied for a YouTube partnership program to monetize the channel. Hopefully I get approved, and if all goes well, then maybe make a little bit of money from there. It's a few cents, but it's something. I'd like to end with this beautiful quote that I love very much. Morgan Freeman said it in this movie called Evan Almighty. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. I think it's a beautiful quote, and I think it's something that I try to live my life by. And I think it's something that Piliavin study shows us that, it's good to help people. The faster you help, the more other people come in and help as well. And a lot of people, especially during COVID-19, people really need our help. So in any shape or form, help people around you, bless them, take care of them. I truly believe that the more we help others, the more we help ourselves as well. So thank you for listening to Piliavin Study. God bless you all. Take care and stay safe.